Living in a newly purchased house for only half the market price was an amazing experience for me, if only my neighborhood wasn't plagued by a thieving HOA Karen. You won't believe the story that happened to me next. Before we begin, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so we can continue making videos like this. This incident happened more than 5 years ago, during the peak of the pandemic in mid-2020. I was a 29-year-old man and a homeowner. I bought a house in 2019 from my uncle, as he had retired and was moving to another home to enjoy his golden years. I hesitated a little before purchasing the house because my uncle had warned me about an HOA Karen in the neighborhood. He told me that it would affect those who participated, and he advised me to stay away from anything related to it. However, the price my uncle offered was only half the market value. I couldn't pass up that opportunity. So despite knowing that this ridiculous HOA organization might cause me trouble, I went ahead and bought the house. On the first day of moving into my very own home, I was beyond excited. It was my dream life, a new house in a modern neighborhood. I eagerly moved my belongings in and arranged them exactly how I wanted. My mood was great until the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was greeted by an elderly woman with short platinum blonde hair that showed signs of graying and a face covered in heavy makeup. She held a welcome basket in her hands. I could immediately guess that she was Karen, and she didn't leave me in doubt for long. She introduced herself as the president of the HOA. Then, without hesitation, she stepped right into my house. As she walked in, she said, "I'll help you fill out the forms to join our HOA." I stared, stunned at her casual invasion of my home without being invited. However, I quickly composed myself, deciding not to make a big deal out of it on my very first day there. I politely declined her offer. "Thank you very much for your concern and enthusiasm, but unfortunately, I have no intention of joining the HOA." Karen's smile vanished instantly. Her tone changed, losing all the friendliness from before. "I'm not here to offer you a choice. Joining the HOA is mandatory. You'll have to comply if you want to live peacefully here." There it was, the unreasonable threat in her words. My uncle had been right. I pretended to be surprised by Karen's statement. What she didn't know was that I understood the law far better than she thought. "Sorry, but I won't be intimidated by your lies. There is no law requiring me to join the HOA. That means I will not be paying any fees or fines, and I'm more than ready to call my lawyer if necessary," I said with a firm expression. Karen's eyes widened in displeasure. Her face started to turn red, her wrinkles scrunching up in a deep scowl. This was probably the first time someone had stood up to her. I would show her that I wasn't easy to bully. She abruptly stood up, grabbed the welcome basket, and stormed toward the door. I remained still, waiting for her to leave my beautiful home. "I don't make your life miserable by being the thorn of this neighborhood. I'll be back." Karen threw out a final challenge. Then she walked out and slammed the door shut. None of that scared me in the slightest. The excitement of starting a new life in my own home was far more important to me. However, some neighbors who supported the HOA came to my house and made it clear that they did not like me because I refused to join their damn organization. I told them it was fine, we were neighbors, but we didn't have to be friends. They also said that because I was an outsider, they would never accept me until I joined the HOA. They isolated me, but that didn't bother me. The ones who became worried afterward were actually them. At the beginning of 2020, I heard from a friend that people were starting to bulk buy disinfectants, toilet paper, and hand sanitizers due to the rapid outbreak of the pandemic. I decided that the best option was to order these supplies online. So I did. I ordered 8 large packs of toilet paper, each containing 12 rolls, a case of 20 bottles of hand sanitizer, 3 boxes of disposable rubber gloves, several boxes of disposable face masks, and a case of 20 cans of disinfectant spray from a well-known brand. It might seem like too much for a single person like me, right? But later you'll see how right I was. Of course, since these were online shipments, I required a signature upon delivery because I didn't trust my neighbors. I couldn't see anyone not stealing the packages if they were just left on my porch. Sure enough, when the packages were delivered, some neighbors noticed and saw me receiving a lot of toilet paper and several other shipments containing various supplies. But that's not all. I was a careful person. Just because I was somewhat anxious, I continued buying similar items whenever I found them in stores, such as small, cheap 4-roll packs of toilet paper, or unbranded disinfectant sprays. My house now looked like a wholesale storage for these essential supplies. I bought them because I had a feeling that my friends or family might need them soon, and I was right. Toilet paper, disinfectants, and hand sanitizers nearly vanished from store shelves within miles, and people scrambled to stock up in the following weeks. The pandemic caused hundreds of deaths. Essential supplies became incredibly scarce and difficult to find. Meanwhile, I had a plentiful stockpile that I had barely used. Rumors about my supplies spread quickly when people started needing them. A friend of mine ran out of toilet paper and had no hand sanitizer, so I handed him a few 4-roll packs and a bottle of hand sanitizer at my doorstep. Some family members also ran out of supplies, and I shared with them. They were all extremely grateful. I was glad that my preparation was finally paying off. However, word of my stockpile spread far and wide. Some neighbors came knocking, asking to buy my supplies or begging for some. Linda, the woman who always stuck close to Karen to mock me, knocked on my door and looked at me with a warm and affectionate gaze when she saw me. "Hello, hope you're having a good day. So, I know you've stocked up on a lot of toilet paper. Could I have some?" she asked while eyeing the stacks of toilet paper sitting on my kitchen counter. Well, isn't that just hilarious? I didn't hesitate to give her a cold response. "Sorry, but these are for my family and friends. And surely you haven't forgotten you said yourself that you would never befriend me unless I joined the HOA. I have no reason to share anything with strangers like you. Please leave." Then I slammed the door shut, leaving her outside with her face turning red from anger and humiliation. It was the same with some others. They didn't like this and harassed me with sarcastic remarks a few times from the sidewalk. "Look at that cold-hearted hoarder. He's hoarding all the toilet paper like he's a king. It's shameful to see such a selfish person." Their crude words were absurd, but I just ignored them. Then, HOA Karen showed up at my door and told me that some neighbors had completely run out of supplies, and they were demanding that I share to help the neighborhood. "You must share your supplies with your neighbors to set an example." What the hell? Why do I have to set an example? Who am I setting an example for? "Get lost," I replied, short and sharp enough to crush Karen's ridiculous idea. My neighbors running out of essential supplies had nothing to do with me. I might be a jerk, but I'm a well-prepared jerk, and I had already read through her HOA regulations online. So even if I were a member of her HOA, I wouldn't be obligated to share my supplies in any way. She stormed off, screaming that one day I would regret not being a good neighbor or for not joining her HOA. Oh, I was really looking forward to that day. Karen did not give up on finding ways to bother me under the name of the HOA. Through emails and every possible means, she nitpicked every little issue with me. The fines started arriving more frequently. I didn't care. I just read them, sighed, and then scoffed. Simply because they were all baseless fines. One day I received a direct email from the HOA. Of course, it was still from Karen. The content of the letter nearly made me drop my laptop from laughter. "Dear resident, I am sending you this letter to inform you of the neighborhood's request regarding the distribution of essential supplies to other residents, as per the majority vote of the HOA members. If you do not comply, you will be expelled from the neighborhood." Expelled? What? I would be kicked out of my own house just because I refused to share toilet paper with people who constantly tried to make my life difficult. I printed out all these ridiculous letters. Yes, I was gathering evidence, just in case. I originally planned only to deal with the absurd fines and unreasonable demands from the HOA. But just a few days later, after I ignored that letter, Karen made a fatal mistake that forced me to change the contents of my complaint. That day, I went to work as usual. Around noon, my home security cameras alerted me that someone was breaking into my house. I was extremely grateful that I had invested in a high-quality sensor camera system waiting for a day just like this. I could view the footage on my smartphone, and the image showed what looked like a woman in tight clothing with her face obscured by a hockey mask. An amateur thief. She had sneaked into my house without even noticing the framed photo of me in that room. A photo where I looked rather handsome in my police uniform. I am a police officer. She was robbing the house of a police officer. I quickly assembled a team of patrol officers. We jumped into the squad cars and headed straight to my house. When the door was forcefully opened, the burglar froze, raising her hands in response to our commands. I could hear her breathing becoming more rapid. The mask didn't cover her entire face, and beads of sweat were rolling down. She was absolutely terrified. As we moved closer, she tried to run, but her hefty body made escaping nearly impossible. Within moments, we had her restrained. I had a suspicion, but I was still taken aback it was HOA Karen. She had broken into my house using a wrench to force open the back door. She was in the middle of tossing my toilet paper and any other supplies she could grab into the backyard, where her children were collecting and packing them up. You heard that right. She had broken into my house to steal toilet paper. I burst out laughing when I heard her confession to my subordinates. I stepped in front of her as my officers handcuffed her. The HOA president caught robbing a resident's house. I think this headline will be a big hit when the media picks it up. Karen glared at me with seething hatred. You are a despicable, selfish bastard. I will make sure you get kicked out of here. I also didn't understand where Karen got that confidence from. How could she possibly kick me out of my own house? Especially when, right after that, I filed a lawsuit against Karen, along with all the evidence I had gathered over time regarding her abuse of power under the name of the HOA. The trial was held quickly. In court, Karen showed no signs of remorse. She boldly told the judge. He did not comply with the HOA regulations and constantly harassed us. He was the one who hoarded all the essential goods, making it impossible for us to purchase them. The judge looked at her with an expression of exasperation. I regret that you keep making such unfounded accusations. Do you have any evidence beyond these baseless claims? The judge's question left Karen flustered. Of course she couldn't answer. There was no evidence. Everything was just her delusions of power and control. And with her failed theft attempt, HOA Karen was sentenced to 1 year in prison along with probation. Her face turned pale upon hearing the verdict. She knew that from this moment on, she would no longer have any chance to wield power again. I sighed. I wasn't exactly happy to see an older woman losing everything right before my eyes, but I also had no regrets about what I had done. This was all the result of her own actions. I was merely enforcing the law. I looked at her indifferently, showing her how her arrogance and unreasonable behavior had led to such terrible consequences. But the story didn't end there. Right after that trial, Karen's husband called me to apologize on her behalf. He also revealed that he had been planning to divorce her for a long time, because this wasn't the first time she had gotten into trouble with the law. Moreover, Child Protective Services had intervened because she had involved their children in the attempted theft at my house. As a result, he was planning to file for full custody in the divorce. I encouraged him and quietly thought that it was the right decision. No child could grow up normally under the care of a mother like Karen. She was a danger. After the trial, Karen served her sentence, and her husband finalized the divorce. Karen was officially erased from my neighborhood. As time passed, life in the neighborhood gradually returned to normal after Karen disappeared from the HOA. No one really mentioned her anymore, and a new person was elected as president. This person did a decent job, or at least didn't cause the same ridiculous troubles that Karen once did. Her husband, on the other hand, continued living here. At first, I thought there might be some tension between us, but in reality, there wasn't. No hatred, no resentment, just two men who had shared a troublesome past with the same woman. He won full custody of the children after everything was brought to light. It turned out that Karen had a much longer criminal history than I had imagined, enough for the judge to make a swift decision. As time went on, he and I became more cordial. Sometimes we had beers together in the late afternoons talking about football, family, or simply gossiping about the neighborhood. Once, he even helped me replace my back door, the one his ex-wife had destroyed in a fit of rage. More than a year passed, and I had almost forgotten Karen's name. Until one day, I was visiting some friends in another city. After leaving their house, I stopped by a local supermarket to pick up a few things. While standing in line at the checkout counter, I absent-mindedly glanced over at the next register, and that was when I saw her. Karen. She was wearing the supermarket's uniform, standing behind the packing counter. The meticulously styled hair she once had was now simply tied back into a low bun. No more expensive dresses or a haughty expression, just a regular employee at an ordinary supermarket. I stood there, watching Karen try to ignore my existence. Her hands moved swiftly as she packed the goods, but her movements were a little stiff. I could feel how extremely uncomfortable she was having to face me, someone who had once been her sworn enemy during the days when she ruled the HOA like a queen. I didn't say anything. There was no reason to, but deep down I felt a bit satisfied witnessing this scene. Karen, who once controlled the entire neighborhood, who saw herself as entitled to give orders to others, was now standing here, doing an ordinary job like anyone else. I wondered how she felt. Was she bitter? Did she regret anything? Or did she still believe she was the victim of some conspiracy? I stepped up to the checkout counter, placing my items on the conveyor belt. The cashier, a middle-aged woman with a friendly smile, quickly scanned each of my purchases. I could sense Karen's deliberate avoidance of my gaze. No greeting, no nod, not even a fleeting glance. I smiled slightly. As I walked out of the supermarket, I felt like a chapter in my life had officially closed. No more confrontations, no more arguments, no more battles. Karen was now just someone from the past, a faint shadow I would no longer have to concern myself with. That night, I texted Karen's ex-husband, telling him about the unexpected encounter. He burst into laughter upon hearing the story and asked, "So, did you say anything to her?" "No, I didn't have to. She knew I saw her, and that was enough." A roar of laughter erupted on the other end of the line. Then he said something that made me chuckle. "Karma really is a monster, isn't it?" "Yes," I replied, looking up at the night sky. "And sometimes it's truly fair." Karen had probably felt that too, just like I did. If she had run the whole with fairness and kindness, things might have turned out differently. Arrogance and baseless jealousy can drive things further down the worst possible path. What do you think of this story? Let us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to follow us for more exciting stories.